Hi, I wanted to make this video because I've been thinking. And this time I've been thinking about trust. And the reason I've been thinking about trust is because I've been wondering how I'm supposed to know who to trust and who not to trust. Does anyone know? Are we all just guessing? My day-to-day life seems to be full of situations where I need to trust people who I don't even know, and I can't help wondering if that's the right thing to do. So I'm curious if other people feel like that too. And trust seems to be a complicated subject, so I've decided to dig a bit deeper to see if there's anything interesting for me to find out. So I'm not thinking about the type of trust that you might have in a romantic or family relationship. I'm more thinking about the sort of trust you have to have in everyday life, often with complete strangers who, for one reason or another, end up having some sort of influence in your life. So even on just an average day, I need to trust that my water is safe to drink, that the bus driver's feeling okay, that the person who prepared the food that I bought did it carefully, stored it at the right temperature, that the dentist had enough training before getting that drill out, and so on and so on. Does anyone else get nervous about that sort of thing, or is it just me overthinking again? So with the things I've just mentioned, there's probably some sort of protection already in place, but even that just feels like another layer of blind trust to me. And I'm afraid my questions about trust don't stop there. I also have the same concerns about information. Someone might tell me something in good faith, but where did they get their information from? So even if I think I trust the person telling me, can I trust who told them? The internet has brought us a whole new world of experts, including AI, but the information can sometimes be contradictory or even just plain wrong. So how are we supposed to figure out who to believe? I just want to add there actually that I love the internet and I feel that it's enhanced my life in loads of different ways. It's just that it can be a bit confusing and overwhelming at times. Anyway, with all the information and expertise that we have access to now via the internet, how do we know who to trust? I wonder if there are any statistics about how trustworthy people tend to be. If I knew that, say, 95% of people are trustworthy, I'd know that it would be reasonable to trust most people, most of the time. But if, say, only 30% of people tend to be honest, then a much more cautious approach would be needed. So I don't imagine I'll be able to find out the answers to those questions, because that would involve asking a dishonest person if they ever tell lies. So what kind of guidelines can I use to help me decide who to trust and who needs a more cautious approach? So I've been giving that a bit of thought, and I think it's useful to consider what the motivation of the person is or what's in it for them. It seems sensible to use extra caution where money or power are involved. People are often very motivated by those things, so maybe the lure of money or power can make people more inclined to be dishonest if it will help get them what they want. That seems quite different from when someone is motivated by a passion for their subject. And I think you're much more likely to be able to trust that their motivation, even if there is still some money involved, is good. An interesting example actually is that since I've been posting videos, I've been contacted by people who say that they want to help me to get my videos to a wider audience. They haven't said why they want to help me, so that's a bit confusing. They don't know me, they don't know what I want from my channel, so I can't see any obvious reason why they'd want to help me. Maybe they want to sell me something, or maybe they just have a passion for their subject and want to use what they know to help other people. So it would help me if they were clearer about their motivations so that I could understand why they want to help me, and then I'd feel clearer about whether I should trust them. So that example isn't especially important because I can just not reply to those messages if I want to. But the bigger problem is that there are other things in our lives that we can't ignore, and that involve trusting people who we don't really know, and we don't have the full story of their motivation, their expertise, or whether they care about us or not. So I can see that trust is needed, for society to run like it does, because as individuals, we can't all be experts about everything. So we have to trust that the people who claim to be our experts in all the various things, like your dentist, your doctor, your train driver, your airline pilot, your supermarket, that list could go on and on. Obviously the supermarket isn't a person, but I'm thinking about the food supply, and that's quite far removed from the farmer these days. So I'm thinking about all the different people involved in the food supply along the way. Anyway, I'm the sort of person who likes to know how things work and to understand the reasons behind decisions. But given that life is complicated, I have to accept that I can't know everything about everything. So I have to defer to other people and I have to trust them. But is that sensible? And what happens if they let me down? I can't help feeling that it can be very risky to trust the wrong person, especially when that other person is making decisions that can impact your life. Maybe if I give you an example from my life that has, really made me dig into this subject. So if you've seen my video about trauma, you'll know that my husband had a cardiac arrest. And in a situation like that, you have to hand yourself over entirely to the medical professionals. And thank goodness for that, because he wouldn't be here if it wasn't for them. But medical professionals are also human and can sometimes make a mistake. And in the aftermath of that incident, my husband was given a prescription for a cholesterol-lowering drug. And of course, he started taking it. But around that time, I was also doing my best to learn about what had happened to him so that I could try and understand and provide helpful support. So I asked my husband why he'd been prescribed that drug, because to me it didn't make sense compared to the things I'd learnt about cardiac arrest and also what the doctors had told us at the hospital. My husband didn't know why, so the next time we spoke to the doctor, we asked them. They said it was a precautionary measure after having a heart attack. So we pointed out that he'd had a cardiac arrest, not a heart attack, and then they went a bit quiet on the phone. They went away to check the details, and when they came back, they said, "Oh yes, sorry about that. You can throw that prescription away because you don't need that drug." So that was quite a shocking moment for me. And I totally understand the complications of being human, but still I struggled to understand how a medical person, and specifically a cardiologist, could confuse a cardiac arrest and a heart attack and then prescribe the wrong drug. So that was a difficult thing for me to make peace with, because suddenly I found that I didn't have as much confidence in any of the decisions being taken by other people that affect me and my family. So after that, I spent hours trying to learn about cardiology, and I even learned how to interpret an ECG reading. I just couldn't seem to stop myself. So I'm not saying that that was the right thing to do, but that breakdown in trust left me feeling vulnerable. So learning about the subject myself felt like the safest thing to do. For every decision taken, I wanted to know whether or not I agreed, and that seemed like the only way to do it. So hopefully that serves as a good example of the quandary that I'm trying to explain. I wanted to be an expert in that situation because it felt too risky to trust anyone. But at the same time, I can see that it was madness, really, and you can't become every type of expert that you might need in your life. I also realised that it was potentially offensive to the doctors for me to be questioning them, and I can understand that. And when I think of myself in that position, of the person I need to trust, such as the cardiologist, if I thought that people didn't trust me just because I made one mistake, I think that would be quite hard to live with. So I think we need to trust that the person is in that position for good reason. And also, I think as humans, we need to forgive each other for mistakes, or else the world becomes a worse place, really. So I think it was understandable for me to be upset, but I think that my reaction to it was too extreme, because trying to become an expert in everything isn't a viable solution and is likely to cause extra stress. I can say that, despite it being interesting to learn about cardiology, it did cause me extra stress. So, despite the seriousness of that mistake, I do still believe that most people have good intentions and you can trust them and defer to their expertise. However, I also think it's sensible to be aware of the potential for mistakes because we're all human. So, for anything really important in your life, I think try not to be just a passenger, but instead try to at least have a basic level of understanding of how things work so that you can ask good questions and take some level of responsibility for the decisions. And I think if that feels too much, then just opt to trust them, because almost certainly you can. I know that I have a tendency to take things too far, and I'm not encouraging that in other people. So I will try to hold myself back from doing something like that again. Because I can see that if we want to live in a respectful and collaborative society, we need to trust the expertise of others. And I know that's the type of society that I want to live in. Sometimes that will mean being okay with taking a completely blind risk so that we don't drive ourselves crazy with taking the weight of everything on our own shoulders. So, back to the original question. Is there any good way to know who to trust and who not to trust? Well, I think I'm not surprised to find out that really the answer is complicated. We need to be cautious where money or power is involved, but we should respect and enjoy the expertise of others, because we'd soon be in trouble if we had to do everything and know everything ourselves. I think that if we use our intuition along with a bit of worldly knowledge, we can put our faith in other people and we can enjoy doing that and making use of their expertise. And we can enjoy the relief of not having to be an expert in everything. So I hope you've taken something useful from this video, but I think that's all for this time. Thanks for watching, and I hope to see you next time. Bye.